now that we're looking at this next iteration, why am I even, I'm much more concerned about security, prosperity, partnership than I've been about trade deals, and I've been concerned about trade deals. And that's just add this new piece. The SPP is different from the others in a couple of ways. One you've heard about very clearly is it doesn't come back to Congress or Parliament for a vote. I think it's very telling, Janet's point, that they didn't sign it when they had that, what they called it that, the Three Amigos Summit. They did not sign the agreement, they stood with each other and swam. Okay, so that was March 2005 when they first did that. But this is about much more than economic integration. This agreement is also about a military integration. This is about reducing civil liberties, to be responding to the terrorist threat in response to what is increasingly a very sad, almost paranoid fear in the U.S. that I don't think we've seen anything like it since McCarthyism. The ability to snatch people, assume they're guilty, assume guilt by association, all of that has taken place, and the kind of McCarthy-era thinking that if you're not guilty, you have nothing to worry about, so why would you keep wanting to keep these civil liberties? And we've seen that begin to creep into Canada as well. We've accepted anti-terrorism legislation that makes the actions of people that are protected by the Charter of Rights and Freedoms potentially terrorist activities. And we've seen this through Security and Prosperity Partnership. We've bought into things like these no-fly lists that we share with the U.S. So this is about more than economic integration. This is also about a response to the potential of a terrorist threat, and part basically of this larger vision that Janet already sketched out, going back to the idea of North American Union, but very much related to the idea of a fortress North America, a large gated community that can remain prosperous, and where the U.S. Will know it's secure because it will not just have border security between Canada and Mexico and the United States, but will actually control our borders to the rest of the world to create a larger buffer for U.S. security against potential terrorist threats. So when you look at that context, the restrictions on civil liberties, the misallocation of resources to respond to the wrong security threat. I made this point yesterday speaking at the other forum, and many of you were there, so I won't go into great detail, but I'm sure that we will all agree, certainly Hans Blix, as UN Weapons Inspector, Sir David King, the science advisor to Tony Blair, among many others, and pointed out that the largest security threat that we face on this planet is the climate crisis. The Al-Qaeda could never do as much damage to the nations of this world as climate change is on the cards to do, and which we can only avoid through very aggressive actions of reducing greenhouse gases. Security and Prosperity Partnership, as we've already heard, moves aggressively in a different direction. The U.S. focus on energy security is about not using less energy or becoming self-sufficient in energy within the United States. It's about appropriating Canadian energy as though it was a domestic source of energy. In fact, President George Bush has spoken of the Athabasca tar sands as part of the U.S. domestic energy supply. It's not, he says, we have to get off fur and oil, but we can use that Athabasca tar sands. Now, that should be considered fur and oil. That's our, Canadian resources, but it's seen as domestic energy supply. And the SPP have the agenda to, right now we're producing 1.2 million barrels of oil a day from the bitumen up of the Athabasca tar sands. And Flaherty and Harper and Lund have committed in various forums internationally to increase that to 5 million barrels of oil a day, which even the energy CEOs of that region say is impractical. They don't know how it could be done on the time frame in which the Harper government wants to increase and expand the flow of energy to the United States from the Athabasca tar sands to 5 million barrels of oil a day. So I could go on about this, but the SPP agenda hardwires an increased and accelerated release of greenhouse gases, which is a direct threat to our security, while at the same time reducing civil liberties, reducing Canadian sovereignty in a very fundamental way. All of this without scrutiny in Parliament. So I think we'll open it up to questions. I just wanted to reiterate one key point about fair trade versus free trade. And economic integration by itself could be done in a way, not just continentally, but globally, because we are in a global economy. We could use the tools that exist through GATT, through NAFTA, through TRIPS, through all these other agreements, and put in place rules that mandated responsible corporate behavior. We could insist that no corporation in the world could do business anywhere unless it met bottom lines that respected labor rights, respected human rights, respected environmental sustainability. And in fact, that's how the European Union is designed. The difference between the EU agreements economically and NAFTA are night and day. Within the EU, which is a very large trading bloc, 23 nations in it now, every nation had to accept the highest environmental standards that existed. So Spain had to move up to German standards. To do that, there was a transfer of resources from the wealthiest to the poorest, so that all the nations in the EU could move up. The other key difference is that as any trade agreement inevitably involves reduced sovereignty at the nation-state level. What they did in Europe, it's not a complete success, but it's certainly a different model, was to have direct elections. The citizens within each European nation elect their own members to a European Parliament, which also, as you've noted, whenever we see the North American Bush-Harper moves to erode action on climate, they are opposed publicly by the European Commissioner on the Environment. This is a position representing all of the EU nations and responding to a European Parliament which exists with elections to that Parliament. So if we move more and more towards global interrelation, interresponsibility, and there's nothing wrong on a global ecosystem to think internationally. Internationalism is a different animal than the neoliberal globalization model. So we're not talking about isolationism in opposition to globalization. We're talking about responsible rules for fair trade, responsible rules that restrict the worst excesses of corporate greed, and responsible rules to protect labor rights, environmental rights, and to move us towards basically systems that support the local. I didn't get into local agriculture, which we obviously need to talk about. All the things that we need of less and local are opposed by the agenda of the Security and Prosperity Partnership, which is more and global with guns. Thanks.